I think we're all ready to start. Okay, to our resource speakers, Ms. Ernestine Ampere and Ms. Patricia Del Castillo, who will be properly introduced later. Our actor, Mr. Dante Klink Ang II, PINEX President, Mr. Sir Jerome Cheng Pascual III, License Director Larry Concepcion, past President George Chua, and other past presidents may be in attendance right now, and all members of the National Board of Directors of PINEX, fellow PINEX members, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Wilma Miranda, your moderator and master of ceremonies this afternoon and the chair of the Media Affairs Committee. Our committee's advocacy is to be able to disseminate as much information to the public on how to properly use media, especially in this time of crisis. That's the reason why we're having this seminar or this webinar this afternoon. To start the program, I now call on one of the trustees of FINEX Foundation and the chair of Philippine National Bank, also one of our business columnists, a member of the Media Affairs Committee, none other than Ms. Florencia Tariela. Flor?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. Let us bow down our heads and pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us together this wonderful day. Lord, we need you. We need you in every aspect of our lives, but just right now, please keep us safe from this pandemic. Lord Jesus, this COVID-19 virus is creating so much anxiety in our lives. But who is this teeny-weeny virus compared to you? You are a big God and certainly more powerful than this virus we face. Lord, we have to admit we have our worries, our fears, and concerns. The future is so uncertain. But it is so reassuring to be certain that it is you who holds our future. So we throw to you, Lord, all our cares, our anxieties, and what troubles us. There are so many bad news. Some are even fake news going around. Help us to be able to discern this well and help us to focus on you, dear God, to remove our fears. For you are the best provider, the greatest healer, the source of all ideas, and you are in control. Please remove our doubts and instead replace it with hope and trust in you. Lord, please provide wisdom, guidance, and direction to the leaders of our country so our economy can bounce back quickly. Help each and everyone present here today, especially the FINEX members and our guests, that in everything we do, we will always do our best in a remarkable, outstanding manner in the spirit of excellence. Lord Jesus, we pray and ask for your blessing in this media and COVID-19 webinar. We ask for your blessing, our speakers and the panelists, the Media Affairs Committee that made it happen, and blessings for each and everyone present here today. We claim this and we thank you, Lord. Thank you in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Fellow FINEX members, ladies and gentlemen, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Ariela for leading our invocation and our pambansang awit. And to formally welcome all of us this afternoon is the CFO and Vice President, Finance, and Treasurer of Shell Petroleum Corporation, none other than our 2000 FINEX National President, Mr. Jose Jerome Jeng Pascual III. President Jeng.
Thank you very much, Wilma. Good afternoon, FINEX members and guests. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar on effective media communication in the time of COVID-19, which is sponsored by our FINEX Media Affairs Committee. We live in a new economic age, the industrial age that started in the 18th century when man laid down his hand tools and switched to the use of machines. Then came the information age in the late 20th century with the advent of modern day computers and the birth of the internet. We are now living in the influential age, where people's behaviors are very much influenced by what they hear or read in various media. This is why we now have the term influencers, persons with the power to affect the buying decisions of other people because of their actual or perceived authority or knowledge on a certain niche topic, or perhaps their position and relationship with their audience. This power is further amplified through media and digitalization. Media is playing a significant role during these very challenging times for our country. Many of us still spend most of our days working from home and rely on media to keep us in touch with what is happening in the world outside. The question for us on the receiving side is, are the insights we get from media based on information that is fact or faked? But there is an equivalent question on the sender side as well. How effectively is my intended message coming across and influencing my audience to adapt my views or adopt my views and persuasions? We are therefore privileged to have with us this afternoon a distinguished panel of speakers who would hopefully take us through these questions and more. Ms. Ernestine Amper, Executive Director of Nielsen Media, Ms. Patricia Del Castillo, FinServe Head of Facebook Philippines, and as reactor, Mr. Dante Klink Ang II, President and CEO of Manila Times. They will be properly introduced by our colleagues Ray Lugtu and George Chua shortly. And after their presentations, the open forum will be moderated by our Media Affairs Committee Chair, Wilma Miranda. Before I hand over back to Wilma and Ray, who will introduce, I would like to again thank Wilma, Flor, Ray, George, Larry Concepcion, our distinguished speakers, the Media Affairs Committee, and the FINEX Secretariat for making this webinar possible. And many thanks to all of you for participating. I wish you all a pleasant and insightful webinar, and please continue to take care of yourselves and each other. Good afternoon.
Thank you, President Jeng, for the short but very warm welcome. Before I call on the next call on Mr. Ray Lugtu, I would like to remind everybody that if you have any questions later on, there is a question and answer box where you can post your questions. We'll try as much as possible to entertain all questions, but all the questions should be posted there. To introduce our first resource speaker this afternoon, I would like to present to you the sub-chair of the website and Business Columns Committee. He's also the present chair of the FINEX ICT Committee, the CEO of Hungry Workhorse Incorporated, and he's no other than Mr. Reynaldo Ray Lugto. Ray?
Yeah, good afternoon to everyone. So our speaker for today is the Executive Director of Nielsen Media Philippines. Her focus is driving Nielsen's leadership in the areas of TV, radio, print, out-of-home, and digital audience measurement in the Philippines. She has been Nielsen's media's market leader in PH in Philippines now for 5 years. She has a solid background and experience in handling media, having held key positions from top broadcasters. media agencies, and currently with the leading media research agency. Her former works included heading TV5's Business Analytics and Media Group. She was also the media director of Touch DDB, Zenith Optimedia, and Karat Philippines, handling top advertisers such as Smart, Nestle, and P&G, respectively. She was also the research head of OMD Philippines with Smart and PLDT as her clients. She started her career in media research with GMA Network in year 2000, more than 20 years ago. She holds a bachelor's degree in communication research and a bachelor's degree in business administration and accountancy from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Let's all welcome our speaker. Will shed light on media. Let's welcome Ernestine or Tin Amper.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all of you, to the officers of FINEX. So before I start, allow me to thank FINEX for inviting me today. So today I'll be talking about the Philippine media landscape during the time of COVID-19 and the many developments in the broadcast industry, as we all know, in the past months. Okay, so let me just I'll just wait for my presentation to be shown on screen. While we're waiting, I just wish everybody hoping that you're safe and well in the confines of your homes. And we're one in this fight against COVID-19. Okay, let me start. Next slide, please. All right, so a snapshot at first half of 2020 on media landscape. So we are seeing media at high levels during the crisis that we're in right now. And we're also seeing the now normal, no longer the new normal. So the now normal in TV viewing, it emerges following the ABS-CBN shutdown. And then we're seeing traditional media digital counterparts posting huge growth because of the lockdown. And then we're seeing ad spending continues to decline in the middle of the pandemic. And then we saw top two networks launching efforts on cable and digital TV in the past weeks. And following the shutdown of ABS-CBN, ad monies move to their affiliate stations and to GMA. And then on radio, we're also seeing radio listening stabilizing during this time. Okay, so to proceed, media consumption in the Philippines at this point is at all-time high. This is during the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you see TV there, the blue lines are still on the top of the viewers or the consumers' repertoire in terms of media. It is followed by out of home, so the billboards, and then internet, radio, and then print. So what we're seeing, notable declines for out of home, which is understandable during lockdown. If we can proceed, please, to the next slide. Okay, so if we look at our Asian neighbors, so we have here map of the East region, TV viewing. So this is TV viewing in terms of average time spent viewing television in minutes. So TV viewing has now stabilized, except for Malaysia. So Malaysia it's still at a 30% increase. If we compare TV viewing from the start of the pandemic up to this time, the most recent weeks. So TV viewing has stabilized for most Asian markets. Next, please. Okay, so this chart, it's quite busy. So It shows movement in TV viewing from the start of COVID. So if you can see to the leftmost part of the chart, this is during the time that we had our first local COVID transmission in Manila, in the Philippines. So this is the TV viewing levels. It's almost 17% of people watching TV. And then during the time that we were placed into community quarantine, so the first one and the enhanced, our TV viewing levels spiked to a high of 23 or 24% of us watching TV at any given point in time in a day. And then when ABS-CBN went off air or shut down, we saw a significant drop in TV viewing for Manila, for Philippines. So this is total Philippines. So during the time that ABS-CBN is on a shutdown, the levels of TV viewing went down to the pre-lockdown levels. However, during the time that another shutdown was done around, I think last week of June, this was when the DTT channels, digital channels of ABS was shut down, as well as their Sky Direct or the direct to home. We see further decline in TV viewing level. So from a high of 24% people watching TV to now around 13%. Okay, so we'll move to the next slide. All right, so meanwhile, if we look at the digital counterparts of TV and radio, we see huge growth during this time. So people shifted to the digital counterparts. So we are seeing reading news online spiking up to a high of 30% from 7% last year. Listening online radio to almost 10% from 2%. Live streaming to 23% from 5% last year without the pandemic and without the ABS-CBN shutdown. Okay, next slide, please. Now we look at the ad spend. So ad spend means the amount of money is plowed into advertising expenditures by our advertisers. So we are seeing big declines, particularly in television ad spend at the height of pandemic, coupled with the significant movements in the broadcast industry. So if we compare spends, TV spends pre-lockdown, during COVID, and the ABS-CBN shutdown, numbers are down by a significant portions at 27% and 41% decline. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Similarly, we are seeing reductions in media spends for radio, print, and out of home during this time, with TV driving the total media ad spend drop. So in a share of say 100% for total media, it is really television spending that's eating the lion's share of the ad spend. So when television advertising moves, the total advertising spend also moves. Okay, so next slide, please. Now, if we look at the top advertisers, they reduce. So top 5 advertisers would be Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, ACS, Unilab, and Nestle. So it is evident, so this is the current time, so March to May 2020. So it is evident that their ad spending reduced at this time, and but compared to what they've been spending for the past 12 months. Okay, so if we move to the next slide, please. So while the top advertisers are evidently cutting ad spending, new categories emerge or have increased their ad spend at this time. So biggest gainers or ad spend growth producers are household appliances, cough and cold remedies, household disinfectants, and other categories that are useful during this time. Okay, so next slide, please. Thank you. Hello, next slide, please. Can you, if you can press more?
Alex? Yeah. Can you have the next slide, please?
Yeah. Okay. So now, while ABS-CBN channel is in a shutdown, we saw the launch of its Kapamilya channel and GMA's Heart of Asia channel and GMA's digital TV receiver, so the GMA Affordabox. Okay. So for Kapamilya channel, um, it launched on June 13, and it already reaches 1 out of 10 people in the TV population since its airing. So at 10.3% cumulative reach or number of people reached by the channel. Next slide, please. Hello. Do I share my screen? I think I have to share my screen now. Okay. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so viewing for Kapamilya channel, the ratings, we call it, ranges from 0.4 to 1%. So since this channel is being aired on cable, it really doesn't match the level of ratings that ABS-CBN before had. So which was around 15 to 16% or even a high of 20%. So comparing the people watching or the reach of the channel, it's really significantly lower than the previous ABS-CBN channel. Next slide, please. Okay, so GMA, as I've said earlier, launches Heart of Asia. So it's also it's a digital channel, and its first digital TV receiver, GMA Affordabox, before Q2 quarter two of this year closes. So they've really been aggressive in promoting these two launches from their end, leveraging on its competitors' absence. Next slide, please. And on June 30, the NTC ordered another CDO or served another CDO to ABS-CBN Corporation, as mentioned, directing to shut down digital channels, the TV Plus, as well as Sky Direct or its DTH service. So after that, we see further declines in TV viewing in the Philippines post this another shutdown. So now, if you can see here in this table, people or viewers can no longer see content or airing in the TV Plus. And if you're a cable subscriber, what you can only see would be channels like Cinemo, Jeepney TV, and Teleradio. The other channels are not available. And of course, Kapamilya channel is also shown in cable. So this chart here would show us the further drops in TV viewing in the Philippines during prior COVID, during COVID, so it spiked up, the violet line. ABS shut down, it went down, the green line, and then further down after the second CDO for ABS-CBN. Okay, so this now is a comparative movement of TV viewing if we compare channels. So this the blue line is total TV, so total people watching television. The green line is GMA and the red line is ABS. So when ABS had its shutdown, of course, we no longer see people watching them. So we directly see a spike in GMA's viewing after the shutdown. And even TV5, we're seeing increases in its viewing because of the shutdown of ABS-CBN. So we see switch in viewers to its competing channels. And if we look at the top programs, so most of us watch television. Before COVID, these are our top 5 programs. So we have there Provinciano, Kapuso Mo Jessica, Soho, Starla, 24/7. During COVID, it's almost the same, top 5. And understandably, after the shutdown of ABS-CBN, uh, all of the top 5 and even top 10 and even top 15 are dominated by GMA programs. And now looking at the top channels in the Philippines, so prior to COVID, the lockdown, so it's really a neck and neck battle between GMA and ABS-CBN. So if you're seeing in the audience shares, it's a close competition. After the shutdown of ABS-CBN, GMA gained massively, almost doubling its audience share at this point. And look, this is a heat map of advertising monies. So this is the period here prior to the start of the COVID. So both ABS and GMA. So this represents monies and ad placements placed in both channels. It shows that both channels have ad monies coming into their stations from the advertisers. So post shutdown, we see zero, of course, zero placement in ABS-CBN, and look at the heat map of GMA. It went from just nearly, very sort of not so busy portion during the lockdown. And then now, despite the lockdown, advertisers shifted their monies to GMA. And if we look at the other channels of ABS-CBN like Kapamilya Channel, Jeepney TV, Teleradyo, ANC, these are also their heat maps, and it doesn't really offset what was lost from their major channel. There are spots, there are still advertisers spending on them, but the amount or the price or the total monies plowed back to these affiliate channels did not offset what was lost from the major channel. Okay, so after looking at television and really television driving media in the Philippines, we now go to radio. So how it is also impacted by the crisis. All right, so this is radio listening. So radio, we have AM and FM. So total radio would be your blue line, FM would be your green line, and AM will be your purple line. So as you can see, so busting the some myths of what people know, it is really FM or music listening that's driving radio in the Philippines. So this is also a 12-month read of the radio listening prior to the lockdown and during lockdown. So we're seeing improvements by end of Q2 of June. So at the start of the pandemic, radio went down a little bit because, as I've said earlier, it's really music listening as the main role of radio in our market, in our country. So people had a need for news, and they looked for it in other platforms like television. So, but we're seeing an increase by the end of Q2, going back to radio listening again. And the increase, so this is the shape of the day of radio. We call this shape of the day. So this is the volume of listeners listening to radio from 1 a.m. to 12 midnight. So we So this peak is what we call the morning drive. Used to be the morning drive, so the highest peak of radio. We are seeing increases across day parts for radio though, but significantly during the morning drive time and the 3 to 4 p.m. blocks. So mostly what are seen in terms of content at this time would be news for AM and still music for FM. In terms of top stations, this is after the closure of the stations of ABS-CBN. So pre-COVID, we're seeing DZMM topping the charts for top 5. During COVID, still there. But after the ABS-CBN shutdown, of course, DZBB, which is the close second, is now topping the charts for top radio stations in AM. And for FM radio, previously it was ABS-CBN's MOR topping the charts for top FM radio. Now it's Love Radio as well as Barangay LS. So that's it for the first half of 2020 snapshot at the media landscape of the Philippines, which we call now the now normal. So I now move on to, if we can move to the next slide, please. I now move on to, so what happens after COVID? Where do we start? All right, so in Nielsen, we know, well, what we're seeing, governments around the world are edging towards plans on how to exit mass lockdowns at different speeds, of course, in different ways. Unfortunately for the Philippines, we're a bit of a slow burn, or we're slow. But you know, the persistent questions for businesses like ours, like the banking industries around the world, is what the future holds and how should we navigate into this future, or the now future. So with billions of monies being pumped into economic stimulus packages, but people still continue to die because of COVID-19. Some countries confronted by the prospect of ongoing lockdowns, longest lockdown for the Philippines for that matter. The question of how to reconfigure economies is significantly dependent on behavioral changes of consumers and marketers or advertisers. So in response, Nielsen, if you can go back to the previous slide, please. Thank you. In response, Nielsen has identified 3 distinct time horizons. We call these time horizons. These are the regenerations of markets beyond COVID-19. So this is a framework that identifies conditions for businesses to rebound, reboot, and reinvent as we confront expected unprecedented economic conditions. So rebound would be the early stage of the exit scenario. So we are looking at it now. So this is the rebound phase for most of the countries. When we've eased up on the lockdowns, on the quarantine, we're at the early stage of the rebound phase. So, and then the next one would be the reboot. So it is a midterm scenario that is positioned maybe later part of this year, so Q4 of this year. And hopefully, in the first half of next year, we will be able to reinvent our economy, the Philippine media, and the lives of the Filipinos in general. So these scenarios we're seeing from global, from region, and from my point of view, from Nielsen's point of view, what the region and the global is experiencing is no different from what we are facing right now. It's just that I think we're sort of lagging behind because of a lot of factors that we all know what these factors are. So if we can move on to the last slide, please. So because of all these changes that's going to happen, sorry, Anna, backtrack a bit. there. So if you look at these scenarios that we and the situation that we're in, we all know that this is, as I've said over and over in this presentation, this is the now normal. So what is the now normal? So we're faced with new consumers. We're faced with consumers that has heightened digital consumption, that has heightened media consumption. If before we're known to be multitasking, watching TV, doing social while texting or calling somebody else, or in a meeting, it will further heighten with with the situation that we're in. And with this, with the new consumer, with the new viewer that we're faced with, our marketers, the advertisers, will be forced to adapt. So they will now be called the new marketer. So in all of the calls or webinars that I've been in, it's sort of a scary scenario that we're faced with all new. But the good thing is, us as humans, as people, we have the ability to adjust, adapt quickly to what is new. So with all of this, and as closing, um, I really hope that the banking industry, banking and finance industry, will still be there. Well, it's lucky for you. You're strong. You're a strong industry amid this pandemic, and it's a vital. This industry is vital as the country, the people, the consumers move into the now normal. And with that, I'd like to thank you, and I hope my talk has shed some light and helped the attendees of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tin Ampere. I was really impressed with the rich information of your presentation. And some of the statistics, some of the information I gathered this afternoon were really a revelation. We will clarify certain items later. We have the chance to do that during the Q&A. So I think our first resource speaker deserves a virtual round of applause. The second resource speaker will be introduced by a past president of PINEX and also one of the business columnists of Media Affairs Committee. He is also one of the advisors. He is presently the president of Bayan Automotive Corporation. I'm referring to none other than past president George Chua. George.
Okay. Good afternoon, fellow FINEX members, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Pat Ojeda del Castillo, FinServ Head, Facebook Philippines, to talk on banking on digital transformation. Pat is a senior digital marketer, having worked for more than 10 years at various tech companies like Yahoo, Facebook, and she's been part of the founding team who started Facebook in the Philippines more than 4 years ago, and currently leads the financial services and fintech business, helping FinServ companies build their digital marketing strategy and drive business results from their Facebook campaigns. Isa kami sa kliyente niyan. She also leads Messenger for Business efforts for Facebook Southeast Asia, helping various companies leverage Facebook Messenger. Alongside her day job, she's one of the co-founders of Pride at Tech, an intertech LGBTQ plus group led by Google and Facebook Philippines, whose mission is to help companies start their own Pride at Workplace community. So without further ado, Pat, please take the floor.
Hello, thank you for that, George. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. I saw in the comments there are people from all over the Philippines, Quezon City, Laguna, even Benguet. My gosh, that's amazing. So thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you so much, PINEX, for hosting this. This is really a great opportunity for us to collaborate and share with your organization the trends that we're seeing and some thought starters on how the business can bounce back or pivot given the situation we're currently in. So with that, allow me to share my deck. I'm trying to request for share screen. Okay. Give me 1 second. All right. So I'm hoping you guys can see my deck now. Basically, for today, I'm gonna be sharing with you guys some user and consumer insights, changes in their behaviors given the COVID-19 pandemic, and some thought starters on how financial services companies can pivot and can adapt to this, like what Tin said, now normal, right? But before that, allow me to share with you guys a little bit about myself. Like what George said, I lead our financial services vertical for Facebook Philippines. I'm also the messenger lead for Philippines as well as Southeast Asia. I've been basically part of Facebook for the last 4 years and have been working with the biggest retail banks as well as fintechs and insurance companies in the Philippines. So very familiar with financial services and been working and helping brands and companies like BDO, Paymaya, BPI, GCash, etc. Leverage our platform for their business. Before I get into the serious stuff, allow me to share with you guys a little bit of how this current pandemic has affected me personally. So I'm a big travel nut. Like I travel every month, as in at least once a month, whether it's for personal travel or business travel. I go around the Philippines, I go outside of the Philippines, etc. In fact, I'm such a travel nut. The first day of the lockdown in NCR, I was actually in the middle of my last business travel. So I was en route going back to the Philippines, and I didn't know what to expect because there were curfews. I heard that there might not be any Grab or cabs, coming from the airport and all that stuff. So I really didn't know what to expect. And then when I got to Manila, when I got to my home, as you can imagine, the next few weeks and the next few months is drastically different than my life before. I was very agile. Since I work with companies and clients, I'm often outside of the office. I do my meetings outside of the office. I'm barely at my desk. So literally, I'm very mobile, right? And so given the lockdown, it was such a 360-degree change in behavior. And that's just one example. If you think about your current customers, they have been, their daily routines has been hugely disrupted given this pandemic, whether it be, you're a customer who's only starting to figure out and who is working from home for the first time of their lives, or an employee who has to balance working and looking after her kids at home and like finding the right space because you have your husband there as well, or your partner is also working from home. So it was such a big disruption for each of us individually, and it goes both for customers, employees, but as well as businesses. Given this huge disruption and change for your customers, the business is also going through the exact same thing. So what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today is a framework of the phases of how COVID-19 has affected and could help businesses respond to this current situation. So very similar to what Tin has shared, but slightly different wording. We are seeing that there are three main phases. So react, which is really providing continuity and addressing the most immediate and urgent needs of your customers. Respond, how do you show up for the bigger community beyond your business, beyond your customers? How does your brand and your company show up? And then re-emerge, how do you pivot, right? Your brands, your products, your services, how do you pivot given this new normal? Before I deep dive in these three stages, we need first to tackle what are the changes from the customer side, from the consumer side. And I read somewhere recently, I think if I'm not mistaken, this was based on a Harvard Business Review, one of their articles, especially for your younger customers, for the millennials, this is the biggest disruptions of their lives, because they didn't experience the war. They didn't, even here in the Philippines, right? Most of us, most of the millennials didn't even catch the martial law. So this is literally like we're at the cusp of the biggest disruption of their young lives. So with that, I wanted to share more about what consumer behavioral changes are we going through. So in the Philippines specifically, 94% globally, 94% say that they have been disrupted and that their behavior has changed due to COVID-19. That's a huge number. In the Philippines, it's roughly about the same, 92%, and that they are very much concerned about the current situation. So it's very evident in the next few stats that you will see. And 82%, very high, expect that this outbreak or this situation will continue for the next 2 months up to a year. So they're no longer thinking that this is just going to be a few weeks or it's going to go back to how it was before. But most Filipinos already anticipate the reality that this is going to be for a much longer period of time. One of the major changes, and I'm not saying this is the most important, but one of the major changes that in terms of their behavior is that 87% of Filipinos say that they're spending more time on their mobile device since the COVID-19 outbreak. And so what's happening essentially is that we're seeing that people are embracing digital connections. So I don't know if you guys have heard the term that even though that we are physically distancing, it doesn't mean that we have to distance ourselves from each other. So people are now relying more and more on digital platforms to stay connected. In fact, because of this behavior, we've seen a huge increase in terms of usage on our three biggest platforms in the Philippines, such as Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger. So since the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen 78% increase on browsing on Facebook, 45% increase on browsing on Instagram, as well as time spent, and 70% more people participating in Messenger group calls globally. So they are relying on digital platforms and such as Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger to keep connected to their family and friends. So the more that we physically distance, the more that we're trying to stay closer and stay connected through digital means and digital platforms. What's interesting is the specific behavior and content that they're consuming on these platforms. So if before people were using Messenger, Instagram Direct, and Live for one-to-one communication or group calling, we're seeing an increase of that even more. In fact, we recently announced that we're going to be launching Messenger Rooms. It's on gradual global rollout currently, but this is a proof point of how much group calls has increased on Messenger and on our messaging platforms. Another interesting behavioral point is that we're seeing that people are more inclined consuming content like artists connecting with fans all over the world. So again, like previously unreachable, celebrities, musicians, athletes, etc. They're doing more live streaming. They're posting more content, and their fans, in return, are more predisposed to participating and actually tuning in. Another type of content that they're consuming more on our platforms is participating in communities and groups coming together for support. So there is a clamor for positive coming together type of content as well as type of initiatives. So how do you show up for the bigger community, right? Like that's very important. Positive content, positive initiatives. What can we do? Like given that times are difficult and that there are a lot of negative things, going on out there, people are looking for what can we do and positive content on our platform. Now, specific to financial services, there are distinct insights as well as behaviors that might affect how you're treating your products and how you're shaping your product roadmap as well as your services. So I'm going to be sharing with you three key themes on behavioral changes specifically for FinServe. So first of all, protection is now a key priority for Filipinos. There's an opportunity for you to emphasize and grow your insurance products and brands. A few insight points here. 97% of them say that they expect COVID to have some impact on their personal finances. So Filipinos now are recognizing that, hey, I need to protect my financial stability in the long term. Granted, I might have some savings here, but this reality, this new pandemic, can have multiple impacts. So I want to be more financially secure in the future. Investments might also be a good product to highlight. 60% of them feel the situation demands them to be more proactive about financial planning. Again, around insurance, micro insurance, or micro investments. 51% of them agree that it will take a long time for the economy to recover. So all leading up to how can we help Filipinos secure their financials in the short, mid, and long term. So some product relevance here, financial planning. So financial literacy is definitely something that you can highlight or get into from a content standpoint. Health and life insurance, investments, whether that's stock trading or what are the areas that they can invest and grow their money in the long run. And then e-wallets and other modes of transactions. Second big insight, the purchase behavior is and will continue to be different. Contactless payment will definitely be here to stay. And you see this in different permutations, right? So lately, you see that contactless payments being promoted in even the traditional means, like whether it's taxis, insisting that you pay through GCash or PayMaya, or in commute areas, MRT, LRT, jeepneys, etc. This is going to continue, right? Because it's much safer for contactless payments, especially even for deliveries, right? So 56% of Filipinos reduce their overall personal spending in physical stores. So you don't have to look far. I'm sure your own behavior, you're probably looking more at e-commerce stores or small businesses selling stuff online. My mom, who is, I think right now 58 years old, has been doing so much more e-commerce online shopping in the pandemic. Even her vegetables are bought from Instagram sellers rather than going to the store. 85% avoid crowded public places, which is very good, social distancing, right? And then 65% have cut down on their leisure activities such as visiting malls, shopping areas, traveling, etc. So essentials and as well as digital and online buying. So I also heard, and you probably heard the same thing, COVID-19 has been the biggest digital accelerator for most companies. If before your products or your brands didn't have a digital equivalent or digital counterpart, now there's no other choice but to go there, right? Because this is gonna continue to be the new normal or the next normal. And so there should be an emphasis on how do you translate your offline products and offline services into an online experience. More examples on that in a little bit. Next key insight, online shopping and essential shopping will continue to be strong. So if before the partnerships of big retail banks as well as big financial institutions are focused on big brands and big retail stores, since on online shopping, on digital shopping, people get access to smaller sellers, smaller businesses. That partnership strategy is now open for a pivot, right? So how do you now partner closer and incentivize with customers buying through small businesses, small retail shops, small e-commerce stores, or direct sellers, right? How do you partner with them, and how do you leverage that behavior? So just to recap the insights part before I go to how could financial services respond to all those insights. Quick recap, 4 points. If you don't remember anything else, just remember these 4 points. People are rapidly embracing new digital connections, especially true in the Philippines. People are turning their concerns into acts of care. So they also expect the same for the brands and the products that they're using. How do you show up for the bigger community? People are adjusting to the new normal, all while anticipating their next normal. So they expect that this is going to be a long-term thing, and that the behavior that they were, or their routines that they were doing in the past are likely not going to go back. And then fourth, companies have now the opportunity to create value for consumers and address their new needs given their new behaviors. So that's it for the insights part. Now, for some thought starters on how financial services companies can respond to those changes. So I shared earlier this framework. Basically, what we're seeing is that businesses in general are going through three main phases. So the react, respond, and reemerge. So I'm gonna deep dive on this a little bit. So react is all about building trust and being proactive in customer communication. What are the immediate needs, need to know, and urgent information that you would have to disseminate to your current set of customers? So some insights here, 64% of people say that companies should acknowledge today's crisis. So don't pretend that nothing's happening or that everything is normal or business as usual. They need to hear some acknowledgement that there's something going on, and that this is change. The way that we do business is going to change. 61% say that it is more important now than ever to hear from brands. So they don't want the brands and the companies that they're using to be silent. So they expect, actually 61% of them as well are open to advertising and hearing more from the brands that they're using. So contrary to the traditional mindset of, there's something going on, there's a crisis going on, let's go all off air. That's not anymore what the customers expect. In fact, they lean more towards brands who are proactive because it personifies the brand, right? It communicates that, hey, our customers are going through something, some changes, that the business and the brands are also going through something. Some stuff that you can talk to your customers about. So things to keep in mind is to deliver, first of all, real value. Again, list down all the things that your customers would care about at this point. Maybe they want to know, what branches are open, what are the new store hours, what are the terms that you're offering in their loans, how can they quickly get in touch with an agent if they want to sign up, in a new service or product. The second one is act responsibly. Can't stress this enough as well. So communicate how you're protecting your measures on safety and how you're protecting your customers. So your initiatives in the branch, for example, are you doing social distancing? How are you protecting your employees, etc. Which is actually also connected to the third point. Consumers now care about businesses doing right by the community, especially including their employees. So if you have programs in place to protect your employees, going above and beyond into like helping them adjust in this new scenario, might be a good thing to communicate that to your bigger customers as well, or to your bigger community as well. Okay, now respond. How do you show care and empathy? And the goal is to express that you understand the current needs and challenges of your customers, as well as the bigger community at large in the Philippines. So the good news here is that so far, 46% of Filipinos say that they approve of how banks or financial institutions have handled the coronavirus outbreak. So you have here good local examples like communicating, the Bayanihan Act, and like extending, for example, the deadline on payments, some early warnings on cybersecurity, since people are gonna use the digital platforms more often, and then some drives or initiatives on donation drives for the bigger community, etc. So in general, Filipinos are approve of how financial services has reacted so far. 46%, not a bad number, but definitely there's also room for improvement there. Now, I'll share with you some regional examples. So this is an example from DBS. This particular example is focusing on initiatives on social good and providing product flexibility, as well as helping customers cope during this new normal. Another example, Prudential Life. I think this was in Malaysia. This is encouraging customers to proactively find ways to ensure their security. So instead of going to the branch, they're promoting their customers to use the digital platforms, or if you must go to the branch, do XYZ preparation. Another example, UOB, sharing valuable information for consumers on potential path to recovery. So again, how do you help your customers recover financially? What are the things that they can do now to prepare, like whether it's a health insurance, life insurance, investments, etc. You can help that you can help them in that area as well. Now, the last one on the framework, it's re-emerge. This is especially tricky, and I think not a lot of businesses are on this phase yet. One of the major things that I've realized going through this pandemic and working with so many companies navigate this current situation is that each business has its own timeline. They're at different stages, so it's very varied. There's a gradient almost where one bank could be at React, another an insurance could be at Reemerge, etc., etc. So there's no right timing, there's no right phase for as long as you're moving forward one after another. So I'll give you a good example here. One of this isn't necessarily banking, but one of the small businesses that I think has really re-emerged well from this pandemic is a small business called flowerstore.ph. So flowerstore.ph is an e-commerce store, and they're probably, you could guess it via the name, their main product is delivering flowers to their customers. So you can order flowers on their website or on their app, and then place that order, and then they will fulfill it. When COVID-19 started and when the lockdown took effect, very shortly after, I think a week or 2 weeks after, Flower Store PH opened a donation drive where their current customers can order essential goods, whether it's personal care or food, via their website, and choose to send it to or donate it to frontliners, whether it be nurses, doctors, policemen, etc. So it's outside of their core product, which is flowers, but they enabled it anyway because it was a way to show up for the bigger community, and it's demonstrating that they acknowledge what the bigger community is going through. Now, that was so successful, they've seen such a huge increase on new people visiting their website, people who Flower Store PH has never reached before, that they've expanded their business now into minimart.ph, where you can donate, you can send to your loved one who is far, or you can order for your own self groceries, goods, essential goods that you might need. So coming out of a simple flower delivery and then wanting to do something for the bigger community, now they've pivoted their business and they have a new business channel, and they minimart.ph was born in the middle of a pandemic. So this is a really good example of thinking, how can the business grow and pivot, given all the challenges, even given all the challenges that we're encountering right now. So for such a big company, for such big institutions under financial services, it's not going to be an easy task to pivot and to reemerge and to find new business channels in the middle of a crisis. But so if you are starting to think that way, there are key teams that will play a very crucial role. So the product team, definitely, the marketing team, the customer support team, and even beyond. So collaboration is going to be very crucial, and working together, as well as figuring out how do you turn offline experiences into online experiences, will be very, very important. So I'll show you some examples, right? So here we put side by side, what could an offline experience look like in an online experience? If in the past you rely on branches to build relationships and processing transaction by a branch, and account openings, acquiring new customers, etc., how could that look like in an online world where people are afraid to go out or to spend a lot of time outside of their homes, or to line up for a long time, or go in a crowded places? So your, let's say, digital banking app or website should be able to do everything a customer can do in a branch. So from an account creation to KYC, to sign up for new products and services, to processing payments, etc., etc. That's really a big one. That's going to be a good starting point. Another financial service example. So if in the past, let's say you have a credit card product or an insurance product, you would rely typically on booths to sign up, whether in high crowded places, whether in malls, groceries, etc., to sign up and get leads. How does that now look like in an online experience? In the Facebook environment, we have what we call Facebook lead ads, where literally you can capture and qualify leads 24/7. Instead of them having to fill out a manual physical application form, they can do that within the Facebook environment. And in this slide, a really good public case study here. I've personally been working with Esquire for the last 2 years. Esquire in particular used to rely a lot on field agents to get leads. In the last 2 years, they've discovered, how much cheaper it could be, and how much more leads and more people they will reach if they're using digital platforms such as Facebook. So if you want to check out that case study, go to facebook.com/business/success stories, and you will see more details about the Esquire lead ads case study. Another example, turning offline experience. Usually you have an in-branch or field agent consultant. So let's say we see this a lot in insurance products, where there are consultants in the malls. There are tables set up there, or in a coffee shop. They will meet in a coffee shop and do a consultation, but the experience is very personal and very one-to-one, right? How do you now turn that into an online experience? And one of the ways that you can leverage, or one of the platforms you can leverage, is Facebook Messenger. Facebook Messenger is a good avenue to have a one-on-one or one-to-one conversation, and have really a more personal conversation without physically having to be in front of each other. So another really good case study is Globe Broadband, where they leveraged Facebook Messenger exactly for that purpose. Now, let's expand that a little bit into customer support. So if, during the beginning of the pandemic, not the workforce for your call centers or BPOs, which is essentially your customer support team, not everyone is able to go to work or work from home. And so there was a backlog, right? I remember at some point, waiting for 2 hours on the phone to talk to an agent for Singapore Airlines. And so if you're looking to alleviate the wait time on the telephone or your other customer support channels, Messenger can help with that as well. So you can provide support, capture the basic questions, the basic FAQs. You probably have a huge organic number of messages coming into your messenger already right now. How do you message people at scale, whether proactively or reactively? There's some automation that's ripe for that experience. And then lastly, offline events. I know offline events is such a big factor as well for financial services, whether it's an activation, a Finlit program, and events like this one that would typically take place in an auditorium or in a grand ballroom or something like that. How do you turn that offline experience into an online experience? So this is a really good example right here, going live on Facebook, or on YouTube or your digital channels like Zoom as well. But there are other ways that you can explore. So in this particular case study, this brand created a sort of money coach profile where it's an advisor. It's a digital advisor. It's a dedicated Facebook and Instagram page who is literally like advising customers on how to handle their money and their finances. So all of the examples that I've shown here today aren't exhaustive. So it's not the complete list, but it's meant to be thought starters, to pique your interest and to kind of inspire you to start thinking about turning those offline experiences into online experiences. With that, if you have any questions, any concerns, and if you're interested to work closer with Facebook, feel free to reach out to me, patdc@fb.com. My role is really to help businesses, specifically financial service companies, accelerate their digital transformation. That's it for me. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Ms. Pat Del Castillo. That was really a very insightful presentation. The way she was able to connect her presentation from consumer behavior to financial scenarios is quite a unique presentation. At the start, I was really wondering how can she discuss something financial with a platform like Facebook, but now I was pleasantly surprised. Anyway, we have time to clarify more on what she discussed this afternoon through our Q&A portion. But at this point, I'd like to call on the President and CEO of Manila Times, Mr. Dante Klink II, to give our reaction to the two speakers' presentation. Klink.
Thank you, Wilma. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Jeng Pascual, your president, the other members of the FINEX board for inviting the Manila Times to be part of your forum today. I'd like to also thank your former presidents, including my good friend, Mr. George Chua, and some of your officers, including the very prolific column writer, Ray Lugto, who also writes from time to time in the Manila Times. Before this pandemic, our industry, that is the mass media industry, has already been facing a number of challenges brought about by the disruption from new media, from the internet. And as our first speaker, Ms. Ampere has said, that this is already this was amplified by the health crisis that no one had predicted, and now the economic fallout that we are all going through. It was quite interesting to listen to her research findings on the impact on the added political storm that now, of course, is centering on ABS-CBN's franchise renewal and the impact on the industry itself. Given time later on, this is something that perhaps many of you, and I know I would like to ask some more questions about, and including, for instance, more information about who the beneficiaries are, because she did mention that GMA7, and I think she briefly mentioned also Channel 5 as the two stations that are benefiting from it. But I'm also interested to hear what other media maybe what are being experienced by the other media, particularly radio. I'm a radio guy. I mean, my preference is to listen to the radio, and I just remember that the functional literacy education survey mentions that radio has the biggest reach among all of the media in the Philippines. So I'd be more interested in listening to the details about that. And of course, as a journalist for the Manila Times, I feel a bit left out not having heard anything about print. So maybe in the interest of time, Miss Amper had to focus her presentation on the bigger players. But of course, for self-serving reasons, I'd be more interested in her inputs about our particular category of media. With regard to the presentation of Mr. Del Castillo, I've always been quite fascinated about the evolution of social media and Facebook in particular, how it evolved from something that was fun to do. How for me it was fun to reconnect with old schoolmates and people living abroad that otherwise would have been difficult to get a hold of, to something that is practically integral to our lives. She talked about the new business tools that are emerging now as new offerings of Facebook, particularly in the field of interest among most of you here in the audience, which is financial tools. But also as a media person, I'm quite interested in the dynamics between traditional media and social media. I remember, for instance, that the former president of BuzzFeed, Ben Smith, had written in his initial column in the New York Times that he had originally thought that traditional media would perish because of the rising popularity of social media. But it turns out that traditional media had made a respectable comeback and maybe, at least according to him, edging out the other media personalities, influencers, because of the capacities of newspapers, television, and radio networks to gather the news and deliver them. This has, of course, been their lifeblood since 500 years ago. But I've been quite fascinated to see the evolution of Facebook and how it is now evolving into offering a number of services that not only make lives easier, but also make our businesses more effective and efficient. I know for one that I would like to have more discussions with Ms. Del Castillo. And in fact, before the forum had started, I had sent a personal message to her on this platform, telling her that I would be interested in reaching out to explore whatever collaborations may be possible between the Manila Times and Facebook. But I'm sure that none of you would be interested in that. And I perhaps should stop there because we are a bit over time. And then I would now yield the screen now to those who would like to ask questions. Again, thank you very much for including the Manila Times in this forum, and congratulations to FINEX and all of the people who have made this forum possible.
Thank you, Mr. Klinkang. We could not have chosen a better person than a media personality like you. Was born and raised as a journalist.
Thank you.
Anyway, you can ask questions later, but I have one question. I would like to start the ball rolling by asking a question. First to Ms. Tin Ampere, with regards to the statistics that she had shown a while ago. She showed that there was a 41% decline during the ABS-CBN shutdown during the COVID crisis. But before the shutdown, there was only a 27% decrease in the ad spending. But it went up to 41% decrease when ABS-CBN shut down. Does that mean that the advertisers did not shift to other networks?
Yeah, that is correct. So there was also a decrease in ad spending when the lockdown started. So our advertisers opted to sort of pause and hold in terms of spending monies. And then when the shutdown happened, it was a huge decline because it's almost, I think, of nearly one third of the total ad spend would go to ABS. So in advertising, for example, there's a threshold. So it's guided by KBP rules that a particular channel should only be allowed to air ad spots for 18 minutes per hour. So beyond 18 minutes, even if you want to accommodate all those transfers from, let's say, ABS, GMA and the other channels will not be able to accommodate it because there's a rule that they have to follow. That's why there's a huge decline with the absence of ABS-CBN.
Mhm. Okay, this time I'd like to ask also Miss Pat Del Castillo. You were talking about, you were saying a while ago that COVID-19 is the biggest digital accelerator. And Facebook, I think, is riding on that bandwagon of digital accelerator or digital acceleration. What are the immediate projects of Facebook that will help spur the increase of digital usage
Right.
or
Thank
digital?
you. Thank you for that question. So for Facebook specifically, it was actually part of my presentation, but decided to take it out because it's a bit long already. But for Facebook, we actually also kind of went through the react, respond, and reemerge cycle for our own business. So if you look at how Facebook has reacted and responded immediately, if you during the first few weeks of COVID, we launched the COVID-19 Information Center, which is a repository of all the data that's coming from WHO and the various governments all over the world. The second one, on the business side, Mark shared this with everybody. The top two company priorities that we have now, and this is like across all product teams, across all business teams within Facebook, is centered around two things. The first one is building our virtual presence. And so we announced that we are going to be rolling out messenger rooms. So because we're seeing an increase on group calling, and messenger rooms is going to be supporting that in the long term. And then the second one is commerce. So Facebook commerce in the form of our specific product Facebook shops is also going to be you're going to be hearing more of those two things, as the year progresses. So that's our re-emerge phase. So again, personally, we went through those three stages, and the way that we're shaping our product and business priorities is around those two things, given the new normal. And so virtual presence as well as commerce are really the trends that are going on digital right now.
You're right, because in your presentation a while ago, I was really surprised that Messenger, those who are spending more time in Messenger, it's 78%, no? It's just a near 87% to Facebook, and Instagram was even outpaced by Messenger. So I think you're right. People are now using more Messenger for their businesses. Before I go on and read the questions from the Q&A box, do you have any question, or Mr. Reactor, Mr. Klinka?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Wilma. Questions for both Ms. Ampere and Ms. Del Castillo. First, for Ms. Ampere, advertising has been known as a barometer of the economy. So whenever there is a downturn, advertising has been one of those expenses that they're first to go. But I just wanted to get your thoughts about what the situation now in the Philippines, because you mentioned the big drop in ad spend with regard to the absence of ABS-CBN in the market. But I was wondering if Nielsen's data digs down deeper to distinguish what kind of cutbacks or ad spend have been held back because of the economic situation now, and how much of it is the result of the absence of ABS-CBN. And then a second question for Ms. Del Castillo. I'm interested to find out how the Philippines compares with the other countries, particularly in Southeast Asia. And it's quite fascinating to hear about the new offerings for fintech and other business tools that you have mentioned. But how savvy are the Filipinos compared to our neighbors? I mean, are we doing more business with social media platforms like yours than the Thais or the Malaysians? I know that is also a function of the digital infrastructure, but maybe you can share some insights about that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. So on the ad spend impact of what's happening. So really, it's a combination of the pandemic as well as the ABS-CBN shutdown. So in my presentation, we've grouped the periods during the early part of the pandemic with ABS still there. So with the pandemic at that time, it was a decline of around 21% in ad spend versus comparing past year. So, but when ABS-CBN happened, the shutdown happened, it doubled to 40 plus decline. So again, it's unfortunate for the advertising industry. You're right, it's the barometer of an economy. In every marketer, uh, the advertising and promotion monies would depend on the amount of sales that their brand or their product has. So if ad spend is slowing down, it is close to reality that the sales or the income is also going down.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's a question here from the Q&A box. You mentioned that you have the capability in that application to qualify the leads. This is for Ms. Pat Del Castillo. I guess this criteria is provided by the customer. Does Facebook provide the qualification of algorithm? Can Facebook provide the follow-up as well as for these leads? When does Facebook turn over? So I think it's more of the lead generation
Yeah.
from Facebook.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So first, I'd like to answer Klink's question on the differentiation of Philippines financial services versus Southeast Asia. I think the biggest difference that we have is the percentage of the unbanked. So in the country, there are 70% of our population of 110, 112 million population of Filipinos are currently unbanked or not connected to a financial institution. So only 30% are connected to the big banks. Versus if you look at Singapore or even Thailand and Malaysia, majority of their more than 50%, 67, 70 plus percent of their population is already connected to a financial institution. So the needs are very different. If you look deeper, why they're unbanked, there are also multiple factors there, right? The lack of government ID, the geography challenges, and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is the Philippines is in a unique position. That's why you see a lot of fintechs in the country. And these fintechs versus or unlike other markets in Southeast Asia are independent from the big banks. So if you look at PayMaya and GCash, they're not connected to a BDO, a BPI, or any other big bank. Versus if you look at the fintechs thriving in Singapore, they're already connected with a bigger, with a big mother bank, right? So that's one of the key differences. And again, double clicking on that, because of those differences, the strategy and the use case is also very different. So, for example, the demand for fintechs in particular in the country is around, yes, on e-wallet, but you see a surge of fintechs specifically on lending because Filipinos need or want access for money because they wouldn't qualify otherwise to have a loan or a credit card with a big bank. So the types of products, the execution, the strategy is also very different if we compare it to our neighboring countries in Southeast Asia. Now I'll park that. I'll move now to the lead ads question. So the short answer is yes, you can further qualify the leads that you will get. If you go to facebook.com/business, you will get a step-by-step guide there just search for lead ads. You'll get a step-by-step guide there on how to build your lead ads form. So there's a way where a question will be asked depending on the person's answer. So for example, let's say your product is a credit card, and you ask, do you already have an existing credit card? If the person says yes, the following next questions will be asked. If they say no, it's a different set of questions. So definitely the lead ads can further qualify the leads that you will get. And further to that, on when or where does it hand over, there's actually a way for your Facebook lead ads to be directly connected to your company's CRM. So if your company already has a CRM where it stores all the leads, whether offline or online leads that you're generating, it can go directly to that, and then it can disseminate to your agents or your customer teams, etc. So there are other ways apart from connecting your CRM. You can manually extract the leads as well, like download the via CSV file and so on and so forth. But it's gonna get a bit too technical and a bit too specific. So I encourage you to go to facebook.com/business and then search for lead ads.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pat. Here's another question for Ms. Tin Ampere. Um, does Nielsen have data on how ABS-CBN is faring on its social media platforms despite the shutdown in its operations and the pandemic?
Yeah. Okay. So I answered this also in the Q&A box. But yeah, there are several studies ongoing right now that we're doing to include the impact on digital, social media in particular. So it's still it's still ongoing. So we will share that with the industry. We usually release quarterly top line reports on new studies. So we hope to just leave your emails with Phoenix and I'll ask it from them so we can share it with you for those who ask the question.
Mhm. Okay, I think we don't have time anymore. There's still so many questions in the Q&A
Ms.
box.
Wilma, do you mind if I ask a
Yeah,
follow-up
sure. Go
question
ahead.
from
Go ahead.
Ms. Tin?
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering. I'm sure that you have other data on other media, but I'm just interested to find out what your thoughts about how how conventional media is really blurring the lines between the product categories. For instance, ABS-CBN has a website, has a book publishing arm, and the Inquirer has a video, and so does the Star, so does the Manila Times. So it's sometimes quite confusing for someone to distinguish if a newspaper is something that exists solely in print, but now is also offering video content. I was wondering how Nielsen's methodologies are changing given those evolutions in our industry.
Yeah, so we go where the publishers or the media owners go. So definitely we measure where they are, what they do. So for example, for print, when Summit Media shifted to e-magazines,
Digital, yeah.
we started monitoring the e-magazine spending. So similarly for the whole media in particular, we know that digital is the way to go. So Nielsen has embarked into digital measurement over 5 years ago. So we started really early. We were the first movers of digital measurement. In fact, Nielsen is in collaboration with IMAP. So it's the digital sort of group in the Philippines, much like FINEX. So we're collaborating with them to make sure that we measure all the metrics that matter for the digital space.
Interesting. Thank you.
I think that winds up our question and answer portion. For sure, there are still other questions, but I think they can ask that later on through the chat if they still have time for the chat box. The speakers were able to respond actually to certain questions in the chat box. We were not able to ask directly from them. So at this point, thank you to Klink for the reaction and for those questions also. We hope you could be able to invite you again also next time. At this point, I would like to call on Ms. Larry Concepcion because President Jang beg off. He has to go to another meeting. I would like to request our Liaison Director for Media Affairs, Ms. Larry Concepcion, to present the certificate of recognition. By the way, we also have a token of appreciation in the form of a 50th year coffee table book and an art plate which showcase the painting. It's actually a reproduction painting of Sanzu, also one of my favorite painters. So, Larry, can you please take over for the certificate of recognition?
Okay. Okay. Can you please present the flash the okay. Okay. So this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Miss Ernestine Amper, Executive Director, Nielsen Media Philippines, for being our resource speakers during the effective media communication in time of COVID-19 webinar. So given this 9th day of July 2020, signed by Wilma Miranda, Chairperson of the Media Affairs Committee, signed by yours truly as the Liaison Director for Media Affairs Committee, and of course by our President, Jose Jerome Pascual, who actually has to go for another meeting. So, Tin, thank you so much for gracing our occasion today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be part of this activity of FINEX.
Okay. And this is also awarded to Miss Patricia Del Castillo, Client Partner for Financial Services Vertical, Facebook Philippines, Inc., for likewise being here with us today as a resource speaker for the same title, Effective Media Communication at the time of COVID-19 webinar. So signed by the same set of persons. Pat, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you so much, everybody, for putting this together. Really appreciate you including us.
Yeah. Don't leave yet. I still have to do my closing remarks. Thank you.
So, we have also
Baka walang makinig eh.
we also have a certificate of appreciation for Mr. Klinkang.
Oh yeah, okay. So, yeah, okay. So certificate of appreciation to Mr. Dante Klinkang II, President and CEO of Manila Times, for being our able reactor during this effective media communications in the time of COVID-19 webinar. So signed by the three of us.
Thank you.
Klink, you know, at first I was confused because I said Dante looked very, very young now. So I didn't realize that the Dante
You're thinking about my father.
I know that.
Sorry to disappoint.
Sabi ko, nagpa-stem cell ata si Dante. Okay, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
And thank you to our resource speakers and to our reactor. Now, can we call again Larry for the closing remarks?
Okay. Okay, thank you, Wilma. So good afternoon again to everyone. So I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Media Affairs Committee and of course FINEX we would like to thank both Pat and Tin, not only for finding time to be with us this afternoon, but also more importantly for sharing their resources, expertise, and experience in their respective field. So I am almost certain, or surely certain, that the very engaging discussion and interesting at that actually made all of us, the participants, a much wiser. So I'd like also to thank, of course, Wilma, Chair of the Media Affairs Committee, for coming up with this very fitting topic, and also for inviting no less than Miss Tin Amper, Miss Pat Del Castillo, and of course Mr. Klink Ang, who are really experts in your respective fields. So I would not want to leave out also the our secretariat headed by Mike Binduan, because they did all the preparations and arrangements to make this program possible. To all who joined our forum today, your participation and interesting questions are very much appreciated. So I'd like to thank technology, which highly supports FINEX's commitment in continually providing all our members and friends with learning and information programs such as this under this, I used to call it new normal, but as Tina's saying, it's the now normal. So stay tuned for more activities and programs of FINEX. So because we have lined up a lot for you for your appreciation and for your information. Well, we are now in the midst and have been in the midst of COVID-19 crisis, breeding fears and anxiety. Let us, however, find comfort in the fact that God is watching over us. In Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6, and I quote, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, or the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." End of quote. So again, friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and be safe. Okay.
Thank you, Larry, for that very inspiring closing remarks. And indeed, we had such a lively webinar today because media topics are never boring. It's always lively, vibrant, and reflect the sentiments of the people.
Yep.
And also because we have two great resource speakers and a very able reactor this afternoon. So media could be either a boon or a bane. It is up to us on how we're going to use it. Hope your time was well spent this afternoon and hope to sorry, I have to put on my video. And hope to see all of you in our future webinars. As we are also preparing for another webinar in October. Hope to see you all there in our October webinar to be sponsored by Media Affairs Committee. Once again, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you.
Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank
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 you,
you.
you.
Thank
Sing. Thank you,
you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Pat.
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Tin.
Bye-bye.
Bye.